Good af good morning, good afternoon. Hope everyone has had a great week and is having a great Friday heading up into this weekend. This is Todd Wenzel, and I am a solutions architect based out of North America. And during today's Tech Talk session, I want to talk high level about the Megaport Cloud Router, what its features and functionalities offer to customers, how it could potentially fit in your use case. And then I want to finish up with a demo, deploying a cloud router, showing you how quickly it can be done, and then building connections to both Google and Azure. So for starters, Megaport Cloud Router. So what is it? So it's a managed virtual router service that is hosted on the Megaport platform. We deploy the servers, you turn up the virtual routing instance. There is no customer requirement to deploy any hardware. It's fantastic because it's virtual. Customers can deploy these resources within a few minutes and then start building cloud connections, which again we'll show you in the demonstration here in a few minutes. So we, as Megaport, position the Megaport cloud routers in most major metro markets across the globe. So Ashburn is a heavy cloud market for cloud service providers, and we deploy the Megaport cloud router in 4 to 5 different data centers within that metro region. And really, what the cloud router is used is for cloud-to-cloud computing. So if you have an Azure workloads that are in Ashburn and Google workloads that are in Ashburn, and you've got some applications that need to communicate with one another, the Megaport Cloud Router will allow you to build that cloud connectivity between those two peers and compute locally within that same metro. So giving you better latency and better performance as opposed to having to hairpin that traffic back into a data center. So a few of the features that the cloud router does offer. So again, it's a virtual router. It's managed via the Megaport portal GUI interface. You're not getting in and logging into the router itself. You're not doing any command line interface. You're just provisioning it through the Megaport portal itself. So there is a NAT feature functionality that is included in the MCR. One of the most popular features we have customers using is route filtering. So at the MCR level, you do have the ability to build up to 50 route filters on that cloud router interface, and you can really build them however you would like. It's fully custom to you. And once you have that built out, you can apply those filters at the individual peer level. So GCP may need a different prefix filter, different than Azure, and you can apply these peers or these filters however you would like, and you can do import and export from that filter perspective. We do, if a customer has a need to connect to a public resource, AWS, Azure, the Megaport Cloud Router will provide public IPs for those public VIFs if you don't have a public IP block. And future product development will be access control lists. Talking about capacity. So the cloud router's been around for many years, probably since 2018, and we've advanced new iterations which provide more feature functionality to the platform itself. Currently, 1 gig, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, and 10 gig been the mainstay. As of about a week ago, we have started the deployment of 25, 50, and 100 gig MCRs. And right now, those are globally, or not globally available, but they're available in the Ashburn metro market and the Chicago metro market. So customers can go in now and go into the portal and spin up those higher bandwidth MCRs. We have a long laundry list of the other cities that we are planning to deploy. So, if you do have a Megaport account team, you definitely want to check with them if you've got a certain metro that you're interested in as far as deploying a larger sized Megaport cloud router. Again, talking about the Megaport portal compatibility, Everything is really configured through automation. Once you build your direct connect or your express route or your partner interconnect, um, APIs integrate between Megaport and the CSPs, and that in most cases the BGP peering happens automatically. In some cases, you may have to put IPs within the Megaport configuration in order to make things work, but the process is still automated. Just there may be a couple of different keystrokes that you may need to take to deploy a certain CSP provider. And as I mentioned before, just here at the bottom, MCR is 25, 50, 100 gig. They're available in Ashburn and Chicago today. I think the Bay Area is close, Paris is close, and then again, a laundry list of other locations will be following. So main use case for the cloud router is cloud to cloud, as we mentioned, GCP to Azure. You do have the ability to do OCI, AWS, Azure, IBM, the list goes on and on as far as building out those individual cloud connections with BGP peering enabled on top of this layer 2 VLAN. You can provision up to these green and blue lines, those are considered VXCs, virtual cross connects. You can provision up to 25 of those virtual cross connects to a single MCR, regardless of size, 1 gig or 100 gig. You do have to take in effect that the MCR bandwidth, if it's a 1 gig MCR, that's the amount of throughput that you will get for any one session. But you could certainly oversubscribe the MCR in building, let's say each of these would be 1 gig. You could have 4 gigs assigned to the MCR, but your maximum throughput would be 1 gig at any time. So, we have a lot of customers that deploy HA MCRs and they may have their prod connected to one. So prod Azure, Google, AWS, and then they have that secondary connection connected to a second MCR for dev. Or they just create a HA pairing and they have prod on both. So if there's a failure on one side, Megaport side, the cloud side, you always have a backup connection going to diverse routers on both Megaport and the cloud services provider side. Also, you can build a connection between the MCR so you can roll traffic between those different peers. So cloud to cloud migrations is a big one. Customers moving out of one cloud and into another, they can use the cloud router for that use case, as well as just standard, multi-cloud. And then if a customer is in a Megaport enabled data center, has a physical presence within that site, you can build a VXC connection between your Megaport and the Megaport cloud router, create a BGP peering session between your data center router and the cloud router. And that will give you the ability to not only do cloud to cloud computing between the clouds, but it will also allow you to get connectivity from your data center into the other clouds through the MCR. Again, prefix filter lists work really well because there may be certain IPs that you want to propagate from GCP to on-prem, there may be some that you want blocked. So that's when you can apply your filters to really customize how you would like to route your traffic. And this is a diagram of what I plan to deploy within the Megaport portal today. So we have our Megaport cloud router here in the middle. And then we have a connection to Google GCP and a connection to Azure. So once again, from a Google perspective, it's a partner interconnect that we're deploying, Azure Express Route. We'll deploy the cloud router first, and I'll choose core site Reston as my location. I'll build a virtual cross connector, a VXC VLAN, directly into the Google's platform. Again, I'm directly connected into the cloud service provider's platform via NNIs. Most of those NNIs sit at 100 gig level. And that will establish the layer 2 connectivity. With Azure, I'll build an express route. I'm connecting a VLAN to the Azure network. And then once the layer 2 has been established, we'll have the IPs will automatically be applied on the express router partner interconnect by the CSP, and we'll be able to see the BGP establish. So really, in this case, what we're doing is we're establishing a BGP from the cloud router on Google side and a BGP session from the express route on the Azure side. It will be up to the customer to plug in their VPCs or VNets into those direct connect type models in order for the traffic to start routing from the VPC towards the MCR or the VNet towards the MCR. Once again, just listing the features that we offer, path prepend. You do have the ability to set BFD timers, and that's just a button you push within the Megaport portal configuration. I can show you that later. Med values can be set, and then route filtering. So let's go ahead and move on over to the Megaport portal. And this is our services dashboard. We have 3 access components, very important to know. The port is the physical interface that would sit in one of your third-party data centers. So think the Digital Realties, the Equinix CoreSite, CyrusOne, QTS. The MCR, of course, is the cloud router that we're speaking of. And then I also have a Megaport Virtual Edge, which is another virtualized platform where we host images for SD-WAN and firewall vendors. I will select MCR. And the first thing I want to do is, as I mentioned, I'm using CoreSite. Let me do this. Let me just type in Ashburn. So this shows you the data center locations where we deploy this virtual router. So CoreSite VA1, Equinix, NTT, and QTS Dulles. You can really use any of these data centers. They're all very close to the cloud service providers. So if you're trying to build an HA pair, it doesn't really matter which of these that you choose. You'll also notice the diversity zone. So if it's on auto, it'll automatically select one of these colors based upon an algorithm. Where's the most capacity available? It's going to automatically choose that diversity zone. What this really means is that there are 2 different servers that sit within this data center, and one we call a red zone, one we call a blue zone. Why is that important? When we do maintenance, we'll do maintenance on a red zone, say one night, and then we would do a maintenance on a blue zone the second night. So if you're trying to build an HA pair of MCRs in the same metro, you wouldn't want to deploy 2 on the red zone. You would want to do 1 on the red and 1 on the blue. I'll go ahead and let the system auto select which zone I'll be in. All right, so here's my rate limits. Again, in Ashburn, we have the ability to do the 25, 50, and 100. You won't see this drop down in the other markets since it's not globally available yet. I'll choose 5 gig just for this demonstration. Call this Tech Talk Demo. Cool thing about Megaport, the pricing is fully transparent to you. So we do offer, no term pricing, no subscription. There is no licensing that is required from the customer. It's included within the price. And then you have 12-month, 24, 30-month terms. Megaport offers our public ASN here, 133.937. You do have the ability to change that to whichever ASN you would like. Most customers just keep it as is. I can shut down BGP. I can add tags. I'll go ahead and select next. It did assign me to the red diversity zone. I'll select add MCR. And then in the shopping cart, upper left-hand corner is where I can order the service. If I want to configure a service and save it for a later date, I can certainly do so. Save it in the shopping cart and then come back to it later, make changes, delete it, or order it. It can give customers some practice, working within the Megaport portal just to get used to the interface. So right now we've got our MCR sitting in a deployable state. As you can see on the dashboard, it gives us the options for connecting to Megaport Internet, the cloud service providers listed here. We can also click on this plus connection button to add VXCs or VLAN services. And you can see here, cloud. If I had any other services within my portal, I could build a private connection between MCRs, Megaport Internet, Megaport Marketplace, enter a service key. So I went ahead and in the I went ahead and created a service key for my partner interconnect just to speed things up. So right now I've got this Google pairing key. I created that VLAN attachment. What I want to do is go ahead and select that, and I will enable this functionality so I can get the pre-activation going. So if you have a Google environment, you're probably pretty familiar with the screen there, this dashboard here for creating that partner interconnect. And right now, we do see the MCR, the service is up, so we're good to go to start adding uh, services to the MCR. I'll select Google Cloud, and this is the list of cloud service providers that we are integrated with. And I can paste in my Google pairing key. And this is showing you the power of the API between Megaport and Google and your Google subscription account, whatever you'd like to call it. Because if there was a digit missing, you would get a failed command or a failure attempt. But this just shows you that the Megaport account is synced with your Google account. Once again, I have a red diversity zone for my MCR, and I have a lot of choices right here as far as where I would like to on-ramp into the Google network. So Megaport NNI is built directly into all of these locations. Um, and what I notice here is CoreSite Reston has a blue zone, and it doesn't look like it has a red zone. The red zone is or let me see. Let's see if we have a red zone in there. I would think that we would, but it doesn't look like it. So we get to choose one of these two locations. Obviously, you can see what the latency is from the Megaport Cloud Router to the on-ramp for Google in this case. So let's stay within the same building and select next. Call this GCP. And here's where I can choose my rate limit. I'll go ahead and select 50. So the unique thing here with the Google Partner Interconnect, you do have the ability to scale the bandwidth up and down in real time. So I set it for 50 today. If I want to go back in tomorrow, I can change that to 2 gig, 5 gig, 10 gig. 10 gig is the max on a 10 gig MCR. Obviously this is a 5 gig MCR, so my maximum would be 5. VXC state, so layer 2 connection between the cloud router and Google. I do have the ability to shut down the layer 2 just to do some failover testing if that's of interest to me. And now my fees, once again, I have a no subscription, which is it's really bill as you use or pay as you go. So if you use it for 1 day, you would divide the number of days in the month by 1, and that's what you would pay. All right. Just keep going through the ordering process. My shopping cart. And order now. So next, I went ahead and created an express route. It's a little bit more of a lengthy process than creating a partner interconnect, but still doesn't take very long. I chose East US 2 as my cloud region where my workloads sit. I chose the peering location of Washington, DC 2, and my bandwidth 50 megs. So we can see the status is not provisioned. Again, we haven't applied this service key yet. I will next go to Plus Connection, select Cloud, search out my Azure, paste in my service key. All right, I was thinking quite a while and I was a little bit concerned that maybe something was wrong, but I'm glad to see that I do have my options. When you're building an express route, Microsoft automatically assigns that express route to two different routers on the Microsoft side. And you can see the primary and the secondary. So the primary is mapped to the Megaport red zone. Secondary is mapped to the blue zone. So if I deploy an HA pairing of an MCR and I have a red and a blue MCR, I would want to make sure that I map my red to my red and my blue to my blue from an Azure perspective, since they're built out in a pair as opposed to the other companies can be single single BGP peering instances. I will go ahead and select DC2 primary. If I want to do just Azure private peering, I want to keep the private selected here. If I want to add Microsoft peering, which does again require public IP resources, I can select the Microsoft button as well. And what will happen is private IPs and public IPs will auto assign to this actual individual peer. And I'll call this Azure primary. Rate 50, that's what I set when I built my express route. Important thing to know about Microsoft Azure is that you do have the ability to increase the bandwidth. However, you cannot decrease. So if you wanted to increase this from 50 meg to 1 gig, the process would be you would go into your Azure console, you would update the bandwidth from 50 to 1 gig, and then you would go back into the Megaport portal and update it to 1 gig. So it's important to know it's a two-step process. You don't want to do one side and then forget the other because you'll have 50 on one side and a gig on the other. Right, select next and add BXC. So now we've deployed our MCR. We've ordered connections to Google and to Azure. We're really waiting on the system to do its thing and build this stuff out in an automated fashion. Looks like we're still in a deployable state. If I go into my Google, I see right now it still says waiting for service provider. So, a few minutes, we should be able to see these connections. While we're waiting on that, I want to show you a couple of things from an MCR configuration perspective. So MCR details. So this gear, this rocket is a good place to look for any of your services. There's different research items that are held there. So with the MCR details, this is where I see my prefix filter lists. If I go ahead and open this up again, so this is where you build the filters. You can do up to 50. Looks like each list can contain up to 200 entries. So you'd simply hit new list, give it a name, and then you would start adding the IPs that you want included in this filter list. You can duplicate IPs in different filter lists, so it's really customizable for what you want to do. And if you want to add more in the future for that list, you certainly can go back in and do so. Once you've built a number of lists, you'll be able to see a drop down here of those lists that you've built. Okay. The looking glass. So this will give you the ability to look at all of the IP prefixes that are being advertised to the Megaport Cloud Router, which includes IPs out of your VNet, your VPC, if you're connected back to a data center, your data center IP. So really anything that you're sending to the MCR will start propagating and filtering into the cloud router. So one thing I've noticed here is that the Google connection is now up. So we see BGP status is good. I see some peering IPs here. 168 is my Azure peer. 240 is my GCP peer. And I can see this is an IP being propagated out of my Google VPC. So this list can get pretty lengthy, but again, it gives you the ability to make sure the MCR is seeing the routes that you want advertised to it. All right, so GCP, BGP peering is up. One thing you'll notice now is there's the IP address for that peering session is shown here, and then you see the status of BGP is up. If we go to Azure, it's still in a provisioning state. I guess one last thing, when we create the prefix filter, here we go. Azure is now up, which is a good thing. Let's go ahead and just take a quick peek at the looking glass. From my Azure side, I don't have my Express route plugged into a VNet gateway, so I'm not going to be advertising any prefixes from Azure just based upon how I have things set up. But you can see that the session is up. And again, these are the routes that are being advertised. Quickly going back to services, I want to select the VXE details and I'll go to AND. So this is the BGP peering session that's been set up through automation. What I can do, again, I talked about shutting down a VXE from a troubleshooting perspective. You can also shut down the BGP peer. So if I've got two cloud routers, two connections to GCP, one on each cloud router, and I want to test my failover, I can shut it down on one of the devices at the peer level and make sure traffic is rolling to the second, and then re-enable it when I'm ready. Let's go ahead and select edit. Tabs up at the top, you see advanced. So this is where you can add ASPath prepend. This is where you can set your med values, and BFD is just a auto turn on. Default settings will be used for your BGP connection when using BFD. Filters, this is where I then would add my BGP prefix filters. So as you can see down here, I could hit the drop down and any list that I've created will show up here, both sides, and then I can choose import export if I want to permit or deny. So it's again pretty easy to add and take off depending upon what you're trying to accomplish and make work. And that really sums it up. So again, today we talked about the Megaport Cloud Router, talked about its use cases. We talked about Megaport's newly launched big MCR, which we're super excited about because we've had customers asking about higher speed MCRs for quite some time. We've gone through a demonstration. We built an MCR, and then we built connections to Google and Azure really within a few minutes. It doesn't take long at all. So just showing you the power of the Megaport platform. I hope you guys all have a great day and a great weekend, and I'm just curious if anyone has any questions.